Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrood, and with me is my brother Justin. Say hello, Justin.
Hello, everybody.
All right. Well, what a day week 2, this Sunday week 2 was. Man, I had one fantasy team that did pretty well against Justin.
Yeah, about that. My rankings went to trash this week at quarterback.
and then I had a team that absolutely crapped the bed. So, yeah.
Welcome to fantasy football.
Welcome to fantasy football. And you may hear me rant about this later on in the year. This is why I don't like smaller leagues. I like the bigger leagues where I know the deeper sleepers and all that kind of stuff and can actually, have an advantage.
Yeah, what I would say is, and once again, this is not necessarily to the news of today, but we like to produce and let you guys know about fantasy football in general, not just the aspects of the games. Anything less than a 12-team league, I would not consider a legitimate league because there's too much depth on the waiver wires. There's too much talent on everybody's teams. I love getting the questions that come in through our DM about 6-team leagues, which is just flip a coin. Like every single one of your guys is a starter, so you just flip a coin. So, but yeah. We're here to help. Be sure to follow us and like us on iTunes and those kinds of things. And then there you go, Ryan.
All right. So, and when you get to iTunes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Don't just look us up. Subscribe.
Yes, hit that button.
All right. So why don't we go ahead and get into the news? And, not that there's very much. So, all right, here we go.
Today's headlines.
In the news, Danny Amendola exited Sunday's Week 2 game with a potential concussion. This isn't anything surprising since this is actually, something that he deals with on a semi-regular basis. He has had concussion problems before. Oh, looks like sleeper's not working. All right. Dalvin Cook was injured in today's games. Looked like it was just a cramp. Looks like he'll be fine. So no need to necessarily go out and get what's his name? Not DeMarco. The other Murray.
Latavius
Murray. That Murray.
Yes.
You can tell how great my fantasy football day went. Latavius yet Cook should be fine. So
yeah, Cook will be fine. Just cramps. There's not a lot of major injury news today.
No. Larry Fitzgerald exited today with a hamstring injury. I think at this point, with the way the game was going, he had just 3 receptions for 28 yards on 5 targets before exiting. I think, honestly, at that point, because they were so far down, they just decided, pull him. Let's just make sure he stays healthy. Yeah.
With as bad as Arizona is right now, let's not become a mash unit by the end of the season. I think that's their logic.
Melvin Gordon went down for a minute in the game today.
I think he left for one play, I think.
Maybe. So nothing big there with Melvin Gordon. Greg Zuerlein, Legatron, left the game before the game even started. Apparently he injured his groin during warm-ups. So for all of you guys who had kickers that, in your lineup, and I found out like 5 minutes into game time, I think, is when that announcement actually came out that he wasn't going to play. So that was wonderful.
Yeah. The thing that always pops into my head when I hear a kicker hurting themselves, because they're football players by paycheck. That's about it. Is watching Bill Gramatica hurt himself on a celebration when he tore his ACL because he jumped up and did a fist pump, but he swung his leg weird and jacked it up. I hope that did not happen to Zerline because I don't like it when people get injured, but it's just interesting seeing kickers who are already questionably fantasy relevant anyway do things like this.
Yeah, pretty much. And let me go back. Let me see. I think that's all I actually had. Let me see. Oh, Todd Gurley left for a minute because of cramping. Whatever. The Dallas Morning News reports that the Cowboys do not have an interest in Josh Gordon.
Which means he's probably going to San Francisco.
Or, hey, ESPN's Rich Cremini reports that the Jets have some interest in Josh Gordon, which could be interesting.
That's interesting because they're already not really using Robbie Anderson. Quincy Enunwa is clearly the number one. And Pryor's actually kind of doing some stuff. So
Here and there.
He was kind of fantasy relevant in a much deeper league if you were to have desperately needed to play him this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are other teams that are hurting more at wide receiver, and you're going to have to give up a draft pick to get him. Otherwise, you got to wait for him to get released by the end of Monday.
Yeah, released tomorrow. So we'll see. I think he gets released, and then it'll just kind of be it's not even going to be a free-for-all because there are so many teams that are just kind of away, just not even going to deal with it. So
yeah, if you couldn't make it at the Browns, I think that's that's saying a lot for a lot of teams.
All right, and looks like that's all I've got for the news and notes for today's headlines. That is it. So we are going to move on to our Kings and Stings section. And at this point, Justin, I will let you take over, and we'll kind of go over the best and the worst performances from the gameplay today.
Yeah, right out of the gate, the best performance of the day. Everybody knows it. Hopefully, you did not have him sitting on your bench. I was fortunate enough to be playing a guy who did sit him on his bench. Pat Mahomes, 326 yards and 6 touchdowns against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Pat Mahomes has been torching people because the Chargers, I think, are a very underrated defense and pretty good in the pass. But Mahomes now has 10 touchdowns in his first 2 games and no interceptions. So great performance so far this week. I've been waiting on Mahomes because he's only had 1 game, and who knows, could have been a fluke. I think he's great. I'm going to be moving him up my rankings for the rest of the season. Number 2, Big Ben, same game. Just no one apparently wanted to play defense today in that game. Big Ben throws for 452 yards, 3 touchdowns, none of which went to Antonio Brown. And so moving on to number 3, Kirk Cousins, 425 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception in a game against the Packers where the Vikings still have shown the only weakness on that team is the kicker, which has been the weakness of that team for the last 3 years. So Green Bay and Minnesota obviously ending in a tie today, 29-29. Back-to-back weeks with a tie. Number 4, just to kind of round it out, honorable mentions, Blake Bortles, 377 yards, 4 touchdowns. I definitely did not see that coming against the Patriots. And then Ryan Fitzmagic, again, pulls something out of nowhere and throws for 402 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Now, we have all enjoyed the memes or the photos that are going on right now with Fitzpatrick and his magical flowing locks of a beard showing up as Al Pacino from Scarface or UFC fighter. Give me his name again.
Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor. Right now, Ryan Fitzpatrick is showing up as some sort of like mythical legend. He's like a centaur right now in fantasy football because what he's doing, he wasn't even on a roster really. I mean, he was Jameis Winston's backup, and now, to me, if the Buccaneers want to continue winning, you leave things where they're at and you let Jameis sit on the bench for when he returns. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think you just keep playing him. At this point, you have no other choice, especially with D-Jack. I mean, it starts off the game with the 75-yard touchdown.
Yeah. I think randomly, I think the best defense to play when the Buccaneers are on their own 25 is play prevent. Because when they hit their 25-yard line twice, D-Jack, O.J. Howard, both 75-yard touchdowns was really all they did in the first half, and then they continue to score in the second half. But just absolute magic right now coming from Fitzpatrick. Moving on to the stings, there aren't really a lot of painful stings this week from the quarterback position of quarterbacks that you would start. Bradford obviously had a horrible game, but he's not exactly startable in any league, even two quarterback leagues, so we're not going to really get into it there. But Alex Smith, 292 yards, a lot of yards, but no touchdown, no interception. Case Keenum, also 222 yards and an interception.
He did have a rushing touchdown, though.
So I guess that's where he gets a little bit of.
That's where he got a little bit of his bump.
I completely forgot about that touchdown, that drop back, kind of fake everybody out with 5 wide, and then dive, very very coyly. Is that a word? I don't know. Sure. Towards the goal line, he did get in, and then Eli Manning, kind of doing what Eli does, 279 yards and a touchdown. And Odell Beckham looked horrible tonight. Just not a lot of production from him. And so on to the running back situation, back to the Kings side. Todd Gurley, picking up where he left off last season. Not the top 2 this week didn't have a lot of yards. They just found the end zone 3 times. And so Todd Gurley, only 73 total yards, but they were destroying the Cardinals. And so 3 catches, 3 TDs. Once again, all of these are based off of PPR metrics. Number 2, Melvin Gordon, only 66 total yards with 6 catches, 3 touchdowns.
Think about that, though, is when you're always starting with the short field because, you can get the Bills to practically, go 3 and out every time.
Hand you the ball. Austin Eckler actually got more yards than Melvin Gordon. Austin Eckler ended up with 98 yards, 3 catches, and ended up with a pretty good day himself.
Danny Woodhead 2.0.
Danny Woodhead 2.0. And so coming in at number 3, Christian McCaffrey, 139 yards, 14 catches. So apparently there's no one to throw to in Carolina except for dumps out of the backfield. Christian McCaffrey. I've liked Christian McCaffrey. I've tried to acquire him in some other leagues. There's just everyone who drafted him is a big believer, and so you're not really going to get much in terms of trade unless you want to give up a little bit too much, unless that person's dealing with an injury and you might be able to swing something. But coming in, number 4, Matt Breida. To throw this back at you once I give the stats, so 159 yards, 3 catches, 1 touchdown. Ryan, are you still holding that Alfred Morris is the back to own in San Francisco? Because Breida he busted off a 67-yard rush, which is where a large chunk of his rushing yards came from. But are you still holding that Alfred Morris would be the one, or is this kind of game leading us to believe that Matt Breida would be the one to own?
Obviously for PPR, Breida is the one to own, which I was somewhat saying from the beginning. I think that Morris, I was trying to lean on the fact that Morris has the experience in that offense, in that offensive system. Honestly, I think it could go either way. Honestly, I still think that, Breida may get big yards like this, but there may also be games where they're just handing the ball off to Alfred Morris and he's able to run all over the place too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's a lot of stuff going on with the 49ers offense. I mean, I would have thought that Pierre Garçon would have more of an impact with Goodwin out.
Or George Kittle.
And so it is one of those things that I don't know if you'll get a consistent go-to guy from the 49ers I think Garoppolo will get his yards, which he always does. Whether or not he'll find the end zone is another thing. He did find the end zone a couple times today. But the 49ers are still kind of that, we'll see. I still think that they'll finish third or fourth in the NFC, probably third with how the Cardinals look. But on to number 5, Chris Thompson, 93 yards, 13 catches, 0 touchdowns. He's continuing to prove himself valuable in the passing game. And to me, he's the back to own. Adrian Peterson, even in standard formats, I still don't like Peterson because he can't stay healthy from week to week and will not continue to prove value on a week-to-week basis because he's old. He doesn't have the same bounce back from recovery. So I really like Chris Thompson the rest of the season above Adrian Peterson. And so
I would agree with that.
And so any other feedback from those 5 kind of kings or top performers, Ryan?
No, it's in terms of the I like Chris Thompson. There was a big fight in my draft, in my live draft that I did. Chris Thompson got taken the pick before another guy was going to take him, which was about 2 rounds earlier than his average draft position. And the guy that picked him had him last season. The guy that was going to pick him, quote unquote, going to pick him, wasn't even there at the draft and gave a list of players that he, with his own rankings. That
if you were not there at the draft, that's your fault.
Thompson, well, here's the deal. He was in Reno or Vegas for another draft that was actually like a big money draft. It was like $500 per team.
If you're not at your draft, that is your fault.
Anyways, but yeah, so that's
okay.
I mean, and that was the same round that I was going to take Chris Thompson 3 picks later. So I mean, yeah, I was on him. I knew that he's going to be the guy. So yeah, it's he's definitely a solid player that I wish I had on my teams.
Now off to the Stings. David Johnson. I think this 51 yards, 1 catch. I think this is really the biggest part here. This speaks to how bad the Cardinals are. I think this is less about David Johnson, because we all know he can ball out if given a running lane, maybe, and some room to catch the ball. But this was just an ugly game. The Rams defense just is crazy good. They were good last year, and then they added drastic improvements on the outside and up the middle. So I see the Rams continuing to do this to teams, and the Cardinals it just shows the gap between the top team and the bottom team in the division. The number 2 Sting, more or less at the running back position, Rex Burkhead, only 22 yards today against the Jaguars. Sony Michel is really kind of showed himself today in busting out a couple of runs, 34 yards for Sony Michel. James White still kind of leads that backfield in terms of a PPR perspective, getting catches out of the backfield. And then Dion Lewis, with as much as Dion Lewis kind of took over in week 1, he shows up on the Sting side, 43 yards, 1 catch in his game today, and Henry seemed to be getting more of the workload. Ryan, do you have one kind of feeling one way or the other? Which do you think we'll see more of moving forward, kind of the Dion Lewis of today or the Dion Lewis of last week?
I think, honestly, that today was more of the fact that it was Blaine Gabbert quarterbacking and not Marcus Mariota. Honestly, I think that's what it was. When Mariota is quarterbacking, I think they were just trying to manage the game as much as possible and not put the game in Blaine Gabbert's hands.
Yeah. Power run.
Yeah. So and I thought, because Mariota was not on the injury report, I thought he was actually going to play today. And it turned out he didn't, because I had Jonnu Smith in a couple of lineups who got me a big whopping 0 because he only had 1 target for no catches. And then I had I don't know if anyone read my DFS article. I had Dion Lewis starting in my lineup and had him as a value DFS play because he was so cheap. And then Blaine Gabbert comes in and starts, and they just keep handing the ball off to Derrick Henry. So
yeah, 117 yards from Blaine Gabbert, but no one started him, no one played him, so he's not a Sting. But he still threw 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, so I think.
Oh, sorry, 1 touchdown.
Honestly, I think it was more of a that's what they're going to do if it's Blaine Gabbert, not Marcus Mariota.
Yeah. So kind of cue Dion Lewis's fantasy value based off of whether or not Marcus Mariota is a starter.
Correct.
I think that makes their offense more dynamic anyway. Derrick Henry didn't really do much either. I think with Blaine Gabbert back there, Houston's got a pretty solid defense. As the rest of the season rolls out, we'll see how good they really are. Once again, only 2 weeks in, but you're going to stack the box because you know Blaine Gabbert's not going to beat you.
Yeah, and one other thing that I think it may have been a typo in like the NFL.com like highlights as they were going through, but it looked like 4 plays in a row that Derrick Henry was getting a direct snap. One of those, he actually passed the ball for 8 yards.
Yeah, it says 1 for 1, 8 yards, 18 carries, 56 yards, which is a horrible rushing average.
So that's kind of how my day went in terms of my running backs.
Now on to the wide receivers, and I like what happened today coming from the Vikings because I have both Diggs and Thielen in my top 12 for the season. But coming in at number 1, Stephon Diggs, 9 catches, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then Thielen right behind him, 12 catches, 131 yards, 1 touchdown. Ryan, I know we've kind of gone back and forth on this at the beginning of the season. Which do you think, all said and done at the end of the season, ends up with more yards? They both had, more value. They both had 13 kind of targets. Stephon Diggs did get kind of a rush. They both kind of had the same amount of yards. Just Stephon Diggs got the extra touchdown and the 2-point conversion.
Thielen is the one that gets targeted the most. As out of the slot, kind of that Jamison Crowder type out of the slot. So in terms of PPR, I mean, they're right back and forth. The problem is Thielen will get them to the end zone, and then they'll throw it to Diggs.
Yes.
So I think that's where I'm struggling, especially today when I was going up against Cousins and Diggs and had Thielen myself. So
it's like Lamar Miller running you all the way to the goal line, and then Alfred Boo.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think honestly, for me, it's going to go back and forth. The whole thing will rest on how healthy Stephon Diggs can stay. That's really the difference.
Yeah, Thielen hasn't really had a injury history, so I would feel more comfortable with Thielen. Diggs has the kind of the big play, I think a little bit bigger play potential, but has had injury issues, and I don't think he's played a full season yet. Moving on to number 3, from the wide receiver position is a top performer, Juju Smith-Schuster, 13 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Going at the beginning of the year, I talked about how Ben Roethlisberger has not been able to maintain 2 top 15 fantasy wide receivers. He's only done it once, I think, in his 12-year career. Do you see Juju continuing this pace, or do you think this was a one game? Obviously, he's still a great player, still kind of a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, but do you think we'll continue to see him at the top of this list?
I think that Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be regularly in that wide receiver 2 area. They pass the crap out of the ball. Honestly, they're not throwing the ball to Connor as often as they would to Le'Veon Bell. And so as long as Le'Veon Bell is out, I think Schuster is the one that eats up more of those targets.
Yeah, James Conner only got 13 touches, so 8 carries for 17 yards. He hardly could run the ball, but with the Steelers playing catch-up almost all day, they were throwing the ball all over the field.
Correct.
5 catches, 48 yards, and the 2-point conversion. Connor still having a good day beating projections. Coming in at number 4, Michael Thomas, who is still just a beast. 12 receptions, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not as many yards as last week, but still, in the first 2 weeks, he has 30 catches.
Yep.
And 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
I feel a little jaded, personally, because I let Michael Thomas slipped past me in a draft where I took Keenan Allen above Michael Thomas, and these first 2 weeks are just slapping me across the face and saying I was wrong. But
well,
yeah.
I think that Keenan Allen will get there. I think that they haven't had the best matchups these last couple of weeks. Honestly,
and it's the Bills. They got ahead early, and they tried to mail it in, and they just weren't very – I mean, going into – I think the third quarter, they had 2 yards.
Game script was not in Keenan Allen's favor today, let's be honest.
No, it wasn't. Not after the first touchdown to Mike Williams and then 2 passing touchdowns to Melvin Gordon.
Yeah. So,
rounding it off, number 5 – A.J. Green, 5 catches, 69 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I'm glad that A.J. Green was able to do it. I don't see it happening very often. I mean, how often do you see 3 catches, 3 touchdowns, and 39 yards? He did round it out with 2 more catches for the rest of the game. I like A.J. Green the rest of the season to be kind of that bottom end wide receiver 1 is a very reasonable spot for him with the kind of a top 5 upside. And then moving on to our kind of our stings of the week in terms of wide receivers. Coming in at number 1, based off of the performance he had last week, Kenny Stills is my most painful receiver of the week. 2 receptions, 17 yards. He had over 100 yards in week 1 with 2 touchdowns. Granted, that was only 4 catches, but still, Kenny Stills, as long as Devontae Parker continues to stay inactive, Kenny Stills is clearly, by far, the wide receiver to own in Miami. Coming in at number 2, we talked about a little bit of his cramping and then them saving him. Larry Fitzgerald, 3 catches, 28 yards. Right now, Arizona's got a lot of work to do. I think at this point, if they go down 3 games to begin the season, it is Josh Rosen time very quickly, because at that point, get him his work, and you got nothing to play for the season anyway.
It's Josh Rosen time right now. Now. I have now. I have Fitzpatrick in one league and DJ in another league. Give it to him now.
Rounding it out, number 3, Demaryius Thomas, 5 catches, 18 yards.
Whew.
Yeah, that is definitely not what he had against the Seahawks. He had similar catches, way more yards. I think stop throwing screen passes to your big man. If you're going to throw screen passes, throw it to Emmanuel Sanders and have Demaryius Thomas block.
I'll be honest. I think with Demaryius Thomas, I think it's I honestly think that this is an age thing for him, that he is not able to get the separation that he used to, and therefore they're trying to find ways to get him the ball and get him going, and it's not working.
Yeah. Well, 5 catches. I doubt you'll see another 5-catch, 18-yard performance unless it's a running back out of the backfield. Moving on, tight end kings. Travis Kelce owners can stop freaking out now. His 1-catch performance in week 1 just got obliterated by his 7-catch, 109-yard, 2 touchdowns. I'm a little surprised with how many touchdowns Pat Mahomes threw, that we only have one other Chief on this list of top five performers across the board. But once again, Travis Kelce is a monster. Those who were freaking out about his usage in week 1, once again, chill, relax. We told you that last week. But monster over the middle, continue to get work. The surprising one on this list really is Jesse James, who comes in at number 2.
Yeah.
5 catches, 138 yards, and a touchdown. Now, I talked a little bit in the preseason about Vance McDonald when he comes back would be the guy based off of the game that he had in the playoffs of, I think, 14 or double-digit catches, 110 yards, touchdown, great game. But right now, it's almost like the Fitzpatrick Winston situation where the guy who is right now outperforming may continue to keep his job, even though there's a better guy sitting behind him. What are your thoughts there?
Honestly, I don't like the tight end situation at all in Pittsburgh anyways, because I've stated this before. I think that this is a fluke. Even when Heath Miller was the tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he wasn't all that often in the top 10, or he'd be right on that edge of the top 10, and it was because of extremely inconsistent performances. He would go 1 week where he would have 8, 9, 10 catches for 100 yards, or 1 catch for a touchdown, and then have 5 straight games where they used him as a blocker, and he would finish with 2 catches for 10 yards. So, honestly, with how many other weapons are there, it just so happened that there was an exploitable matchup for Jesse James. This is not going to – the tight end thing is not going to be a regular thing in Pittsburgh. It's AB, whoever the running back is, whether it's Le'Veon Bell or James Conner, and Juju Smith-Schuster with a little bit here to Washington here and there. So
yeah, but 8 catches, 198 yards, and a touchdown in the first 2 weeks. He will be highly targeted on the waiver wire. I will look elsewhere personally. Once again, for a lot of the reasons that you stated, but we'll get into waivers on tomorrow's show. Zach Ertz, once again, bounces back from his horrible performance in week 1 with 11 catches, 94 yards, but he doesn't score. Once again, Zach Ertz owners, you just got to ride this whole like Nick Foles thing, but clearly right now, you played Tampa Bay, you lost, but clearly it was the Aguilar and Ertz show with Ajayi when he was on the field. And so those are your 3. So if you got one of those 3, you're going to be fine. Whether or not Wentz plays in week 3 or week 4 is still yet to be seen. But if you have Ertz, you should be fine. You should have some good matchups coming down the road over the next couple of weeks. And so coming in at number 4, this is the one that kind of hurts because I had him at number 9. Evan Ingram, 7 catches, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Good exploitable matchup for Eli against the Cowboys. Solid game from Ingram. He is going to score from time to time, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense as well. And I think Odell having a bad game is really what led to Ingram having a little bit of a better game, in my opinion. Once again, I see the Ingram situation much like you see the Steelers. There's too many mouths to feed for it to be a consistent basis. Obviously, Ingram can still be kind of that middle tight end 1 range, but I see Ingram slipping a little bit more than most others for the rest of the season.
yeah, you had him at 11. I had him at 5.
Yeah, like I said, my rankings were good. There's just like 1 or 2 in each position that just smacked me upside the head. I don't think anyone saw Bortles as a top 5 performer.
No.
I think there were a lot of people that saw Mahomes as a top 3, top 4. A Big Ben I had high. Ryan Fitzpatrick is at this point I'm throwing him in his top 5 next week. I don't care because he's throwing 400 yards in 4 touchdowns, so I'll take it. But rounding out the tight ends, number 5, O.J. Howard, 3 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Outside of his 75-yard touchdown, he had 2 catches for 24 yards.
Correct.
But he is getting used and can run like a gazelle once he has the ball in his hands. I love his ability to do something with the ball after he's caught it. I just would prefer that he had a little bit more target share in the offense.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think that here's the problem. I like Chris Godwin, who is now 2 back-to-back weeks with a touchdown as the wide receiver 3. And you also have O.J. Howard as a tight end. I think those 2 are going to go back and forth, to be completely honest, and a lot of the target share is going to go to Jackson as long as he's healthy and Evans. So
yeah.
Real quick, now that you've gone through all the kings, I know you're going to hit the stings for the tight ends here in just a second. Just to continue to wallow in my own misery for today, here's guys that I went up against today, all from the same team. Kirk Cousins, Stephon Diggs, Michael Thomas, Zach Ertz, Chris Thompson. all those were on one team that went up against me today.
Yeah,
All
so
of them-
you lost.
All of them were Kings. Let's not forget Nelson Aguilar was also in there, and Alvin Kamara was also in there, who
Yeah.
both had solid games.
And Kamara didn't hit his projection. I mean, a lot of people were like, "Oh, Kamara didn't hit me." I was like, "He still got you 18 points. Like, chill. His projection was 21. He's still going to miss at times."
Yeah, so I
So-
just need to wallow a little bit more.
And then moving on to the Stings at the tight end position, I think all three of these guys were Kings last week. Rob Gronkowski coming in as the most painful one because of your high draft stock in him. 2 catches, 15 yards. So are we going to hear another quote from Jalen Ramsey tomorrow or Monday as this show comes out? Or are you predicting? I'm predicting another Jalen Ramsey quote of "I told you so" or something along the lines of "I told you Rob Gronkowski was just okay," kind of a thing.
Yeah, we're probably going to hear it. And while there are a lot of people that love hearing that from guys like him, it drives me up the wall. Just shut up and play. But, whatever.
I kind of want to see his grandma out there.
See him take out his own grandmother.
I don't want to see an elderly lady hurt, but I just want to see if he would really do it because I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it. Here nor there. Number 2, Jack Doyle. Great week 1. 2 catches, 20 yards in week 2. I don't really know what to do with this whole Colts situation. Kind of hit and miss all over the place. Once again, Ebron is the one that gets into the end zone from the 2 tight end perspective. Do you think that's because he's a bigger target, better target? He's not getting the coverage that Doyle is. What's your thoughts there?
Eric Ebron is a great athlete. He just, for some reason, was not able to create that chemistry and connect with Matthew Stafford. A lot of people claim that he had hands of ping pong paddles, and that's just how great that's how great he could catch.
Like a seal?
Like a seal. However, for some reason, he's got something going here with Andrew Luck. And while at the beginning of the year I was really touting Jack Doyle to have a good season, I'm kind of switching to Eric Ebron. I think that Ebron, because of his size, is probably going to get more of the red zone looks. And it looks like Andrew Luck trusts him. So,
yeah, the one thing that I'll say about Ebron is he's not getting a lot of targets. He's getting about 4 a game. He was 4 for 4 last week with a touchdown. He's 3 for 4 this week, but he only had 29 yards. This is not something that's going to be crazy. I would still go with Doyle. We both had him as a top 10 tight end. Once again, your tight ends are going to have really bad weeks. I think Washington's defense is underrated. I think it was a somewhat difficult, challenging matchup. Once again, Andrew Luck is not really able to throw the deep ball, although he did connect with T.Y. Hilton on a touchdown. I think this is just something you're going to have to go with from the Colts offense and their atrocious offensive line.
Yep.
Number 3, George Kittle. Great performance last week. Highly touted. Didn't you have him on your DFS lineup or no?
I had him as one of my value plays for DFS this week.
Value play for DFS.
And
he was a value for a reason, apparently.
Well, you and I both had him ranked high this week, and it just didn't work out.
So once again, we all have bad weeks. 2 catches, 22 yards, but San Francisco does get the win. Garoppolo, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Once again, still not a player I would really go with. But Kittle, I would have thought with Goodwin out, he would have been more relied on. But not as much movement going to Kittle. Selleck did get the touchdown, so they are still targeting the tight ends. 2 catches, 22 yards for Selleck. I think Kittle will bounce back in future weeks. Still a guy to go with because he's got Garoppolo's eye. We'll put it that way.
Yep.
So that rounds out our Kings and Stings. What you got, Ryan?
Really, as of this point, that kind of covers it for there. We're at this point we're going to take a quick peek at the Monday Night Football game before we call the show. Kind of look at the guys that could possibly help you out for your game for your week. I've got one. in my case, I'm so far behind it doesn't matter. In the other league, I'm beating Justin. I think I've got the Seahawks defense left to play.
Yeah, I need a miracle from what do I got? Trey Burton. I need Trey Burton to do Trey Burton preseason things.
So
and more.
Yeah. So I mean, let's be honest. The Seahawks the first week, it was just a bad week. They're still getting used to this offensive line. Again, I know a lot of these guys are the same from last year, but they did not. Let's say I think DJ Fluker's out again this week.
Yeah,
possibly.
I believe so.
So what scares me honestly is the fact that both their starting linebackers are out. You got Bobby Wagner and KJ Ryder out, which I think is the only reason that the Seahawks signed Michael Kendricks, who's been convicted of insider trading.
Which, according to Greg, who's one of our staff writers,
who has worked in that industry,
who has worked in that industry, doesn't think Kendricks is going to get more than 6 months because he didn't make hardly any money, which is weighted in these trials and these hearings about insider trading. How much money did you make? How well did you cheat?
Yeah.
Or in Monopoly, how much money did you grab as the banker? Like, you grabbed a $1 bill. Whoop-de-doo. You're not going to get a slap on the wrist. But it's like Greg thinks he's going to get 6 months. Who really knows? But that is my primary concern, not the Monopoly grab, but the linebackers being gone. I think this is a huge game for Jordan Howard owners and for Trey Burton owners because the entire linebacking core, who's left?
Really, it's honestly Shaquem Griffin is our top linebacker right now.
And he got benched. He got benched against Denver because he's trying too hard.
Yeah, missing a couple assignments is just not. Yeah, it just wasn't keeping up with the gameplay. So
I have his jersey. I love Griffin, but he needs to learn to do his job and not over pursue every play trying to make the play.
So in terms of this game, honestly, Jordan Howard obviously is going to have a huge play. Tariq Cohen with how much especially now that we know that both Wagner and KJ Wright are going to be out, Tariq Cohen could have a big game. Kind of in the same way that Philip Lindsay did last week against the Seahawks. In terms of the wide receivers, Allen Robinson is a possibility to have a bit of a game, depending on how the DBs are checking their assignments.
If Griffin, twin brother, not the linebacker, the corner,
Shaquille.
If Shaquille is on Allen Robinson, as a Seahawks fan, I'm more comfortable.
Correct.
If they switch over to the other side, I'm terrified.
Yeah.
Because we basically have one corner and nobody else.
Yeah. So honestly, your best plays right now are going to be Burton, Tariq Cohen, and Jordan Howard. As far as the Seahawks go, you're going to start Russell Wilson because even with the fact that the line is not in great shape, the Bears have Khalil Mack, who's going to be coming off the edge like crazy. Honestly, I think Russell Wilson has the ability to create no matter what. You even look at, he got sacked 6 times last week and didn't have a great game. Not having a great game, he still threw for, 298 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns?
Yeah.
Yeah, he also threw a couple interceptions, but he threw for 3 touchdowns and almost 300 yards. So I think that the Seahawks will still be okay in terms of providing some offense and something for your teams, but really it's going to be Russell Wilson. If you have return yard scoring, Tyler Lockett may be an option.
So you and I both agree that Russell Wilson is still playable, although risky. I mean, you drafted him, you're going to play him.
Yeah.
In order for them to win, he has to beat his projections, period.
Correct.
Because I don't think Seattle is going to hold Chicago's offense as much as Chicago's offense is not a juggernaut. It's not the Minnesota Vikings offense.
Correct.
But who of the wide receivers do you feel more comfortable playing? Is it a Tyler Lockett or Brandon Marshall?
Yes.
You got to pick one.
I understand that. It depends on your scoring. If you have return yard scoring, I would go with Tyler Lockett because he's able to score on the deep ball. Brandon Marshall is probably going to get more volume. So if you don't have return yard scoring and you have Brandon Marshall, I would definitely go that direction.
I would go Tyler Lockett personally.
If you're waiting on Brandon Marshall as your last hope, you're in big trouble. You're
toast.
Your team is toast. So
I would go with Tyler Lockett. A little bit more chemistry, more speed.
True.
I think in trying to get the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands, there's going to be a lot of slot route, quick slant stuff. I like Tyler Lockett, also a better deep threat. Brandon Marshall does not have the speed to break away. So really the option for a Brandon Marshall touchdown is a jump ball in the end zone.
correct.
So to me, I like Tyler Lockett, but I don't really hardly like the offense at all. Obviously, I think Chris Carson will beat his projection because I think they'll be able to do a little bit of running and a little bit of more dump off, so you'll get the PPR value.
Yep.
But I see this as Chicago winning by 7 points personally.
Okay. Yeah, I hate to say it as a Seahawks fan, but I think the Seahawks can win it. It's going to be tough on them. Honestly, can Mitchell Trubisky actually finish a game? That's going to be part of it.
We didn't cover our stat that we talked about before the show.
Oh yeah, I saw this on Twitter. I can't remember who did it.
Trubisky.
I can't remember who did it, and this is why this is somewhat important to this game. I can't remember who said it, and I'm sorry for not giving credit to who actually said it because I haven't been able to find it on Twitter again. But Patrick Mahomes threw for 6 touchdowns today. On Sunday, threw for 6 touchdowns. Mitchell Trubisky has 7 in his career, and that's includes last year. So, yeah.
Which would you – no, I'm kidding. No question. Well, I think that's it for the show.
All right. Yep. I think that's it. Again, we want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Blogspot. Where all are we? Blog Talk Radio, Castbox. Doesn't matter where we are.
Hit us on the iTunes.
Hit subscribe, please. Hit
it all.
Share the episodes out with those that you know. Again, this has been the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan.
And this is Justin.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Hey, Skull King Nation. Thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.